Production of Autoline This Week is underwritten in part by...
Did you know advanced high-strength steels are the leading material used by automakers to achieve the new fuel economy standards? Advanced high-strength steels are lighter in weight and reduce greenhouse gas emissions without compromising safety, performance, or affordability. Steel, a sound, sustainable investment. Today, tomorrow, and beyond. For more information, visit autosteel.org.
You know why I pulled you over, ma'am? I need you to recalibrate the Doppler shift on the return signal. Radar's on the frisk.
Do Sonata drivers know something you don't? The Sonata from Hyundai.
Let's talk truth. When buying a car, we all want a great deal. Yet it's possible you could pay thousands more for the same car as your neighbor. That's why TrueCar provides upfront pricing information and a network of TrueCar certified dealers that guarantee savings without negotiation. Now, if someone paid too much for their car, well, it won't be you. So, when buying a car, get guaranteed savings. Visit TrueCar.com.
And now, here is your host, John McElroy.
Thanks for joining us on Autoline This Week, where we're going to be talking all about engines, and that's because I've got a good chunk of the Ward's Auto staff here with me who do the 10 Best Engines Award every year. And joining us for the show are Drew Winter, Christy Schweinsberg, Steve Finley, and Tom Murphy. Great having you all here.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Drew, you got to tell me, how long have you been doing this award?
Well, we're in our 19th year now, so quite a while. And, you know, our list is a little different from a lot of the other lists that are out there that are either enthusiast-oriented or efficiency-oriented, where we do have a price cap of $55,000. So
not per engine, you mean per car now?
Right, for
What's the thinking behind that?
Well, the idea is we want more of a, we want to recognize engineering achievements and good engines in mainstream cars. I mean, you know, it's pretty easy to make a great engine for a car that costs $150,000. What we want to do is pick the engines that in the high-volume mainstream cars.
Tom, how do you go about evaluating these things? Because I imagine it's a little bit difficult to separate the rest of the car from just evaluating the engine.
It is, but you know, just to Drew's point on one thing, to clarify, it's only the new engines that we evaluate each year. So an engine that has been significantly re-engineered or improved with some way by integration of some new valve control system or direct injection or significantly more horsepower, those are the engines that are going to be in the running. A clean sheet, all new engine, that's definitely going to be in the competition. But it's not just any engine that's in production already. It's got to be something that's all new in the marketplace. So this year we had 40 engines that we evaluated. That means the 10 engines from last year's competition plus 30 all new or significantly improved engines. And yeah, the way we evaluate them, we don't put them on a dyno, we don't take them to a track, this is seat of pants, real world driving in our daily commute. So it's on the highway, it's in the city, it's in the neighborhoods.
Christy, walk me through your evaluation process. You get in the car, you start the engine, take me from there, or take our viewers from there.
Always reset the fuel economy, which may or may not.
The trip computer on the instrument panel.
To get an accurate read for myself, for my driving style. And just the thing about 10 Best Engines is you drive it as you would drive your own vehicle. You know, we're not doing any crazy maneuvers. We're not, putzing along to get the best fuel economy. We're really just driving it in our daily lives. So drive it home, drive it to the grocery store, take it for the weekend up north, come back. There might be stop and go traffic on 75. Well, that's great because, that's how people are going to really live with the cars.
Steve, I imagine, too, you've got to look at all the specs and data and things like that, but so much of it's got to be even just listening to the engine, I would imagine.
Listening to the engine, feeling the engine, the whole works. What we also have to do is, if you've just driven a car with a V8 and then you get into an EV, you have to recalibrate yourself as to what you're driving, because obviously they're very different engines for a very different consumer group, and you can't compare the two, obviously. So we're always making that calibration as to, okay, what are we driving, how much does it cost versus its segment competitors.
how do different kinds of engines perform, i.e. gasoline versus diesel versus electric or hybrid?
Well, you know, it depends on what you're looking for. And really our list reflects a broad variety of engines. We usually have some V8s, some V6s, I4s, and recently we've included electric vehicles and extended electric vehicles like the Chevy Volt on there as well. So we try to get a wide variety, again, to reflect the American marketplace and changing technology. So it's a big variety.
So how are the hybrids and electrics and diesels all stacking up against the gasoline engine?
Well, this year we had some very interesting hybrids in the competition. We had 3 pure battery electrics. We had 8 hybrids in total, so that's including straight hybrids plus plug-in hybrids. And then we didn't have any diesels at all in the competition. The Volkswagen 2-liter diesel was on the list actually for 3 years, and then it was voted off, I think, last year. So it doesn't come back in the competition until it's all new. So
there's been no significantly new diesel.
Exactly. Right. So now there's a number of new diesels coming next year that will be in the competition. There's from Mazda. There's the Chevy Cruze. There's also the 3-liter from the. I'm not sure if it's 3-liter, but in the Jeep Grand Cherokee, and then also the Audi Q7 TDI, which we were supposed to have in this year's competition, but they couldn't get us a car in time. So anyway, but none of the hybrids, none of the electrified vehicles made the list.
Why not?
They were close. There were a number of them that were very close, but at the end of the day, we just weren't blown away. We weren't convinced that the vehicles in the competition this year significantly raised the bar beyond the hybrids that we had seen in the past. I mean, the Prius has made the list 3 times over the last 15 years. I think in the last 15 years, each time the Prius was new, it kind of raised the bar. It brought us something new that we hadn't seen before. And this time, even though some of the plug-ins, I thought that the C-Max plug-in hybrid was quite good. I really enjoyed driving that. I accelerated up to 80 miles per hour in pure electric mode. I'm thinking, this is okay. This is all right. Getting on the freeway, it's not that bad. But at the end of the day, we just couldn't really see it beating the other gasoline engines that did make the list.
And one of the things we're noticing, and probably the general public is too, is that some of the novelty of electrified vehicles is wearing out. Now we have a 220 plug, a fast charge plug at our offices in our parking lot, and then we usually have most of us have access to at least 110 to plug it in at home as well. But what we're finding is just that with the increased efficiency of the new gasoline engines that are coming out, and then kind of getting used to electric vehicles and saying, well, okay, it's fun, but the plugging in part is getting to be less fun. And then on EVs, the worrying about the range anxiety issue is very significant. So it's a little bit of just the novelty wearing off. And now we're kind of sitting there raising the bar, I think, on electrified vehicles as sort of what kind of hurdles they have to cross to be considered equal to some of the best gasoline engines.
We need to see more range. We need to see range well above 100 miles per gallon.
Per charge.
100 miles per charge, to really make us feel comfortable, that range anxiety can be mitigated.
Yeah, range anxiety is very real. And I would also note, to your point about the novelty, is that the Volt and the Chevy Volt and the Nissan Leaf were previous best engines. And that had a lot to do with the fact that they were first to market and very new and novel. And now, as you say, Drew, the bar is up there, and it's got to be more than just an electric or electrified engine.
Christy, how do you separate evaluating an engine from the kind of transmission it's with? Because that makes a huge difference, whether it's a manual or a regular automatic or even a continuously variable transmission.
It does, and for me personally, it's very difficult. I don't know that I can. I think.
Oh my gosh, an honest journalist! All right, I love
it. There were some vehicles we tested this year. The transmission was horrible, and you can't discount that. It's impossible to do. So I've not been able to successfully separate the two. I think certainly the name of the award is 10 Best Engines, but I think we're looking at the powertrain holistically.
It's a challenge. Truly it is a challenge, and there are people who say, well, is this an engine competition or a transmission competition? Well, to some extent it's both, because it is the holistic integration of the engine and the transmission. How well does it turn the wheels? How well does it move all this mass? And So, for instance, in the 2-liter turbo segment, which, it's flush, that segment is just full right now, and we have 3 of them on the list this year. The BMW 2-liter turbo is great and has been on the list now for 2 years. It has an 8-speed automatic transmission, which in the 3 Series, it makes a huge difference. I mean, it gave us 28, 29 miles per gallon, in a car that size with plenty of power and never feels slow, and the shifting is always very seamless. Well, that same size engine in the Cadillac ATS with a 6-speed automatic was like 6 miles per gallon worse than the BMW. So, I mean, the Cadillac engine also made the list. I mean, it's a great engine and all, but it just shows you the difference in these transmissions, where the transmission can make a huge difference in our experience of the, how well it turns the wheels and how well it impresses us in terms of shift quality. Also, the CVT in the new Honda Accord, the 2.4-liter 4-cylinder, which also made the list. I mean, that CVT is a big reason why why that engine makes it onto the list again, because that CVT is, I think it's probably one of the best CVTs I've ever driven. It's very smooth. It's tremendous. And then we also drove that same engine with a 6-speed manual transmission. All of us are kind of predisposed to enjoying the manual transmission because it's the best way to truly isolate the engine and experience all that shifting on your own. If you want to run it to red line, you run it to red line. You don't have anything interfering with that. So, the transmission is a key factor.
But to answer your initial question, we try to get everything with a manual when we can.
Which is
for the very reason that Tom just mentioned. Yeah, because not all cars offer manual transmission.
Except that a lot of the automatics that we're driving these days are more, they're more efficient. It used to be in the old days that the manual was always your choice if you wanted the fuel efficiency. Well, now with these multi-speed automatics and some of these CVTs, I mean, you're doing significantly better than with even a 6-speed manual.
Well, let's go through some of the engines then. Tom, you mentioned you had 3 2-liter turbos, 3 different 2-liter turbos on them.
Yep.
Why don't you name them? Let's talk about that a bit and then get to some of the others.
Yeah, the 3 2-liter turbos are from BMW, the 2-liter in the 328, the Cadillac ATS 2-liter turbo also, the Ford Focus ST, and also the Taurus using the same 2-liter turbo EcoBoost. From the Germans, we have the Audi S5, which is a supercharged 3-liter V6. We also have, from BMW, the 135IS, which is the 3-liter inline-6 turbo N55 engine. Just a fabulous package. And then also the 2 Honda Accord engines, the 2.4-liter inline-4 and then the 3.5-liter V6. And then also the Ram 1500 with the 3.6-liter Pentastar, which I didn't think it was going to have much of a chance, an engine moving a full-size truck because, the mileage is not going to be great, but there was no argument about that engine. It made the list with no problem at all. And then I think the last one that I haven't mentioned is the Subaru BRZ, which is the 2-liter FA engine, the Boxer engine in the BRZ, 200 horsepower, which is 100 horsepower per liter in a naturally aspirated package, which, you don't see that very often. Light, again, low mass, lots of power, great package.
What are some of the trends that you're all seeing in engines these days? I mean, there's some obvious ones like turbocharging really coming on strong, but what are some of the others?
Well, certainly smaller displacements. We've seen that. I mean, the idea of a little 4-cylinder engine powering a big Ford Taurus would be unheard of not long ago. So a lot less V8s. A lot less V6s, and essentially the V6s are replacing the V8s, and the V8s are becoming more specialty powered power plants. The V8 that made this year's engine is the biggest, baddest production V8 there is. It's the V8 in the Mustang GT500 makes 662 horsepower, which is just unheard of. And plus, it doesn't have a gas guzzler tax, and it gets maybe 25 miles per gallon on the highway. Now, it's not everybody's cup of tea or whatever, but that's pretty amazing engineering. And when we went to Ford made a presentation to us of all their engines, and they went with all the hybrids and all their small displacement engines, and then the GT500 guy got up and said, well, I'm the guy that burns up all the gas that these guys are saying.
Well, I said that if that didn't make the 10 best engines, it should make the 10 beast engines because it's a beast of an engine. But it's also a pretty decent engine. It has a lot of technology in it. And
good engineering. I mean, basically, good thermodynamic engineering. And
we looked at, I think, 3 good V8s.
Yes.
And, so to your point that V8s are not dead. Maybe they're going to go niche more than they have been, but they're still alive and well.
But the sub-2-liter engines, I mean, that's just amazing to me because you hardly ever saw in the U.S. an engine under 2 liters, and now we're seeing a ton of them, and there's a lot of them that are very good.
And a Taurus, and a full-size Taurus, as well as the Focus. So talk about a range of vehicles.
And Christy, what are some of the trends that you've picked up on in your evaluation?
Pretty much the same. I mean, smaller engines. The vehicles really aren't getting any smaller, but the engines keep getting smaller, but as powerful or more powerful than the engine that came before it. So that's a pretty big change. And certainly the electrification of vehicles, as Tom mentioned, we tested a lot of hybrids, plug-in hybrids, a couple of pure EVs. They didn't quite do it for us this year, but maybe next year. We're still at the infancy of these vehicles. It's important to remember. I think everybody expects them to be great out of the chute, but we're internal combustion engines great out of the chute. No, it's taken decades of refinement. So
in terms of technology, I mean, something that we did notice this year, direct injection has been the rage. Everybody's going with DI for a lot of different engine platforms. And this year, Chrysler kind of put the stake in the ground with the Pentastar and said, you don't always need direct injection. And they make a pretty solid case that you still get great performance. And that engine in our competition has gone up against DI engines in its direct class for the past 2 or 3 years. And it has beaten the DI competitor each time. And Chrysler makes a pretty potent case in terms of the cost benefits of not integrating DI. Something else that we're seeing a lot of, even more so this year, variable valve timing, a lot of intricate controls of the valve train to help the engine to breathe better. The Fiat 500 Abarth having the multi-air system, which is a hydraulic valve control system. Infinitely variable, fascinating technology. It didn't make the list, but it was close.
Well, the Pentastar engine won last year in the Chrysler 300, and this year in the Ram. And the big question, everybody loved the engine, but the big question from the beginning was, could that small engine power that big truck? And the answer is yes, it could. And so I'm starting to wonder, we've gone from V8s in trucks to now V6s. Is there someday going to be a V4 pulling a full-size truck?
Kind of doubt it.
Or I4, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I don't know.
You think V6 is as low as you can go?
I don't know.
Of course, I never motorcycles.
Yeah, I never would have said that a 4-cylinder could move a car the size of the Taurus or the Explorer either. So.
Well, the other thing, too, that I find amazing is if you go back, 20, 25 years ago, the magic, the holy grail for engine designers was to try to get to 100 horsepower per liter.
Yeah.
Now I want to say something like the Focus ST is 125 horsepower per liter. I mean, it just blew right through what was the benchmark. Yeah. And I'm talking about the benchmark for very expensive, exotic sports cars. And now you get this little pocket rocket called the ST that, has blown through that.
But now even GM beats that with the Cadillac ATS, 136 horsepower per liter. Last year, the previous generation of that engine in the Buick Regal GS made 135 horsepower per liter, and we had never seen anything like that before. So yeah, that you're right. The Holy Grail was 100 horsepower per liter. Now in our competition, that's the price of entry. It seems like for a lot of engines. If you're not at it or close to it, so.
Isn't it all the electronics too that have made such a difference? Because you could go back a couple of decades ago, and there were plenty of turbo engines. But they were almost like on-off switches. They took a long time to have the power come on, and then it came on like a sledgehammer.
Saab Viggen, yeah.
The turbo lag, the spray and pray.
And now with the direct injection, variable cam timing, and the electronics, not only controlling the engine, but matching it with the transmission, just seems to be, to me at least, some of the magic that we've really seen come about just very recently. I'd say in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and it's their ability to control the actual combustion event has really changed, and so and then also what we're seeing really is the need being forced by fuel economy and emission standards now has the resources and the money pouring into these engine programs where, in some cases, they're just applying a lot of technology that was out there, but they couldn't afford to do it. Now they can't afford to do it or have to. And so we're seeing a lot of advanced technologies flowing into small mainstream engines, which is making them much more powerful and much more efficient.
So where do you all see this going? I mean, you've been doing this for almost 20 years right now. Where do you see engine technology going?
It seems like every year it's fascinating just to, you don't really know until you're deep into the competition and you've got 40 engines on a piece of paper that you're evaluating, and you start to put two and two together and realize, the transformation that you're witnessing in terms of powertrain development. I'm thinking already to next year's list, and I already have my list so far of what we're going to evaluate next year for 2014. So that Mazda diesel engine with a compression ratio of 14:1, very compelling, very interesting. So diesel compression ratios are coming down, gasoline compression ratios are going up. So, it's about efficiency, it's about reducing NOx in the diesel side. But next year we're going to have the small block V8 from GM. Which we've gotten the full debrief on that, the download on all the technology in the small block, and I just can't wait to get my hands on it and drive it, whether it's in a pickup or the Corvette or whatever. Again, that $55,000 price cut is going to be fairly important. I don't know if we'll get the Corvette with that engine, but at least we'll get a pickup or something else with that engine.
Well, another thing, in a year or two, we might be testing fuel cell vehicles, depending on where their price falls. But that's just going to be an amazing event too. I mean, we've all driven some fuel cell prototypes and whatnot in the past, but to actually drive a fuel cell production vehicle, which a number of automakers now are talking about bringing out around 2015, that's going to be another thing that I just never thought I'd live to see. It's incredible.
And then talk about at the opposite end of the spectrum of the big V8s, Ford has this little 3-cylinder, 1-liter engine. Yeah. Over in Europe, Fiat's got a 2-cylinder, sub-1 liter engine. What do y'all make of these inky-dinky little engines coming out?
Yeah, well,
I just drove the Fiesta with the 1 liter and just loved it. In fact, I drove the 1 liter in the Focus. Ford had a European Focus here in the U.S. for us to drive, and I was like, wow, this is astounding. I think I calculated like 38 or 39 miles per gallon in that Focus, and now last week driving the Fiesta with that engine, that's the actual car that they're going to sell in the U.S. Next year, 43, 44 miles per gallon. And, we were hammering this car. We were not going easy on it. Never at any time do you feel like there's a lot of turbo lag. There's not a lot of thrashing about. It's like all these issues that used to be endemic in 4-cylinder engines, all the 4-banger moniker, that is gone, I think. Most of the engines that we're driving, they're very refined, and, you'd think that a 3-cylinder engine would have a lot of NVH problems. There's special engine mounts and other damping methods that, they've really solved a lot of these problems. So, a 3-cylinder engine, I think, we're going to see a lot more of those in the next several years.
As Drew was saying, anybody can make a $150,000 engine or a car that costs that much with a quality engine in it. But the revolutionary thing is that so much attention is being paid to these smaller engines, these very inexpensive engines. It might be a kind of iffy business model or business proposition. It's like, are you going to get enough profit back? But they're doing it for different reasons. One of it is compliance with new standards of fuel economy. But the fact that they're doing it is quite amazing.
I don't think it is an iffy business model. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense in that if you can put out a vehicle that feels like it's no compromise at all, like that Fiesta with the 3-cylinder engine. If there's no compromise, then there's no problem. Once a consumer feels like, oh, this isn't as good as the 4-cylinder I had in my 1984 Honda Civic or whatever, that's when you're going to run into problems. But it seems like automakers are getting pretty wise and pretty savvy to the idea that there just can't be any compromise at all. And to Steve's point, they have to sell these vehicles to hit the cafe nut. And so, and to Drew's point, that's exactly right. For Ford to continue selling something like the GT500, they've got to load up the market at the other end. It's all about the balance in the fleet. If you load up with with a lot of good small engines that people are more than happy to drive, then you're fine, because your average overall is going to go up and might allow you to still sell a 662 horsepower supercar.
And sell out, by the way.
I got to imagine, too, that when you get down to 2 and 3 cylinders, there is a cost savings. I mean, you're eliminating pistons and rings and valves, and even though you're adding things like turbochargers and variable valve timing and direct injection and all that stuff, if you can chop out some of those cylinders and valves, there's definitely a cost savings.
Well, except I did a story on this recently and talked to some of the piston makers and the valve makers and everything else, and what is happening is, the number of what they make is going down, but the cylinder pressures and all the things that the high heat and pressures that are going on to make these engines more powerful and more power dense means you have to put more engineering into those pistons and valves. And in some cases they're talking about making them out of steel rather than aluminum and all this. So there's a lot of fancy engineering that's going to raise the price of those fewer cylinders. So there are trade-offs in everything. But you make a point where, some of the cost, at least cost areas, is going to go down.
Tom, we're down to the very last minute or so of the show. Well, what's the industry's reaction to your award?
Well, we haven't announced it yet.
No, but I mean over the 19 years.
We've gained traction with it every single year that we've announced it. When it started out as a small event in a cold, dank basement at at Cobo Center during the auto show, it was barely anybody came, and then next year more people came, and the year after that it got a little bigger, and then eventually we had it set up in a small ballroom there at Cobo, and then eventually we had to move over to the Pontchartrain.
Now it's a big ballroom.
Now it's a huge ballroom at the Rensen, and 500 people come, and it's a big lunch, and we have the Jumbotron with the video packages, and
the top executives all come.
They come from around the world to collect the hardware, and it's
powertrain engineers can feel very underappreciated, and this is their moment in the spotlight.
This is their Oscars. Right. That's exactly right.
Yep.
Well, look, with that, we're going to have to wrap it up. But Drew, Christy, Steve, Tom, thanks so much for coming in. Very interesting. I can't wait to have you guys go out and announce to the world who the new 10 best are. Really cool having you. And
thank you, John.
Thank all of you for having tuned in for this, and join us again next week for Autoline This Week.
Production of Autoline This Week is underwritten in part by...
Did you know advanced high-strength steels are the leading material used by automakers to achieve the new fuel economy standards? Advanced high-strength steels are lighter in weight and reduce greenhouse gas emissions without compromising safety, performance, or affordability. Steel, a sound, sustainable investment. Today, tomorrow, and beyond. For more information, visit autosteel.org.
Why?
Because plants need water to grow.
Because baseball's played in the summer.
Oxygen and hydrogen.
Because I forgot to get a receipt.
Why?
Why not?
Why?
Why don't you go ask your dad?
Do Sonata drivers know something you don't? The Sonata from Hyundai.
Let's talk truth. When buying a car, we all want a great deal. Yet it's possible you could pay thousands more for the same car as your neighbor. That's why TrueCar provides upfront pricing information and a network of TrueCar certified dealers that guarantee savings without negotiation. Now, if someone paid too much for their car, well, it won't be you. So, when buying a car, get guaranteed savings. Visit TrueCar.com.